Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we're discussing the one, the only, the new I'm Thinking of Ending Things film, directed by Charlie Kaufman, based on the book I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reed, starring Jesse Plemons and Jesse Buckley, Toni Collette, David Thewlis. Music by Jay Wadley and cinematography by Lucas Zal. I am not familiar with Lucas Zal, but he's the cinematographer on Loving Vincent, Ida, and Cold War. Oh, I did watch Cold War. That was pretty good cinematography. I'll say that. That was pretty sure that was the Polish film. If I'm not. Yeah. That was directed by Paul Pawlowski. Which I actually like that movie just a little bit more than this. But let's get into it. This is going to be kind of a tricky review, and I think that most people that have already seen it will understand why it is considered a tricky review. This is going to be a tricky review for basically the reasoning of major reveals and have you or have you not read the book? Have you read the original I'm Thinking of Ending Things book by Ian Reed, which actually has a slightly different ending than this? So I'm only going to be able to talk about that in the spoiler section, which kind of deters me from being able to talk about a chunk of the film. So I'm going to talk about the technicals and what I thought about this movie, just kind of going into it, of what's going on. And so yeah, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. The only reason I wanted to watch it was because the specific cinematography and Charlie Kaufman. This guy is what you would probably call as like an auteur director. He's wrote, and I think he directed as well, being John Malkovich. Oh no, Spike Jones directed that, but he wrote Being John Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind was one of my favorite movies. I'm not sure if did he direct that as well? No, he just did the screenplay of that. Michael Gondry did the directing of Spotless Mind. So I guess I haven't really seen too many of them Thinking of ending things. Anomalisa, I guess, is another movie some people had mixed feelings about. I know that a lot of his movies are polarizing. And so I kind of expected that going in, but my lord, this movie really tested my patience. I think there is, I mean, if you don't like the oddness of the trailer, then you're not going to like the movie. If you're going in this movie looking for more of a horror film, I don't think you're going to like this movie. If you're going in expecting, kind of a looming dread happening throughout the entire film, kind of like an Ari Aster Hereditary kind of film. I mean, it does have that Toni Collette spice in it, which is exactly what you got from Hereditary and Ari Aster's work, the last two, Hereditary and Midsummer, how those kind of had this like looming dread happening throughout the movie. It definitely feels like that. But essentially, the movie is from the perspective of a young woman who contemplates ending her 6-week relationship with her boyfriend, Jake. And so the entire movie is them driving to the parents' house, being at the parents' house for one night, and then leaving the parents' house and trying to be home in time, for work the next morning or something like that. So that is the essential plot of the film. The thing is, it's sprinkled in with these really long spurts of dialogue that are quite monotonous, in my opinion. If you were going in this expecting some Pulp Fiction dialogue of them talking about a Crown Royale with cheese or whatever the hell, it's not that kind of quippy snap dialogue. This dialogue is really dense, it's really thick, and it relies heavily and almost film and just pop culture in general from all sorts of art. No matter if you're talking about literal art like paintings, or whether you're talking about film reviews or actual movies. It's like you just have to know these random spurts of dialogue to really understand or pieces of pop culture and history to kind of understand what this movie's really grappling at. And so the problem for me in this movie is, besides, I think it's acted amazingly. I think the story is almost there. It's like an 80% script. I think it needed just a tad bit of studio interference to say, not everyone is going to understand this movie. We need to put this scene in. We need to do this. I felt I didn't completely understand this movie until I watched and listened to like 4 or 5 different reviews. I had to learn about what the difference was between the movies and the movie and the book. And I quite honestly don't mind doing that. Like, I'm going to do that anyway. It's what I like doing, is watching the films, watching the TV shows, and then doing a deep dive. But I don't think you should have to do that to understand the concepts of the movie. Like, I feel like they are dangling this psychological horror film in your face for, it's a 2.5 hour movie. It's 2 hours and like 15 minutes or something like that. Yeah, it for what feels like 2 hours of that movie, it feels like a psychological horror film of something just doesn't feel right. And then all of a sudden, at the very last little bit, instead of hitting you with the big reveal of what's been going on, they go off in this like metaphorical dance, and that can only serve so much if you don't give the viewer enough to grasp on. Because I felt like I was looking at a puzzle piece a puzzle that was missing like the main pieces of what you're looking at. And you got the edges, you got the border, and there certainly was this really detailed and intricate puzzle, but there's things that you're absolutely missing, and almost feel essential to watching the movie after you read the book. It's a completely different experience, is probably what I would say. If you have any knowledge going into this of what it's about, then yeah, it would very much help from reading the book first, I guess. It's one of the few times I guess would probably recommend that, I guess. I don't know. Books and movies, I feel like, should be able to stand on their own in a way, but the way that this movie is, the way it ends, it just feels too much of a question mark in the air. And actually, there's something that happens during the credits that make things definitive of what this movie should be, and kind of plant your foot into what's going on. But Netflix is notoriously known for turn on another, as soon as you end something, you are essentially watching a trailer right before the directed by in credits come on. It's almost just that quick. You got to watch the end of the credits of this movie to really understand the full length of what happened. Now, I enjoy the cinematography and the set design and the atmosphere of this. It felt like, you're in this car for such a long, monotonous time, and it feels claustrophobic. Like, what's going to happen? The scenes are so long and drawn out in a way that it feels looming in a way that could be potentially dreadful. But then all of a sudden, you're there too long, or the pacing gets flipped off in a way. The pacing is throwing off the horror the psychological horror elements of it. It's like, all right, get on with it. Are they crazy or not? What's going on? And so, yeah, and the original novel came out in 2016, by the way. But yeah, so I kind of, might be a movie that might benefit from reading the plot real quick. So, let's jump into the plot of the movie, and I might be able to talk a little bit more about how I felt about the individual scenes and stuff like that. I didn't take notes, like strict notes on this, but I felt like the editing by Robert Frazen was very deliberate, and the details that went into this. I mean, they said that there would be scenes where they would have like 5 different types of the same outfit that they would wear, and they would just keep changing the outfits in between the scenes and the cuts, and it was just to throw off the mind and stuff like that. And so I love that type of storytelling when it's like, very detailed and things just feel uneasy, and you want the viewer to kind of unravel the mystery themselves. The thing is, I felt like the mystery became unimportant to the story once it hit about the hour 45-minute mark, and they just started to go all metaphorical, I guess, or something like that. But let's talk about this plot, and this is obviously going to include spoilers, so this is going to be a little bit more detailed. So let's get down to it. A young woman contemplates ending her 6-week relationship with her boyfriend Jake while taking a trip to meet Jake's parents on their farm. During the drive, Jake attempts to recite a poem he read when he was younger, Ode Intentions of Immortality, and pressures the woman into performing one of her arts in the car to pass the time. These two things felt so like, what the fuck am I watching? But with it interchanged and editing, talking about how Jake watches, people perform Oklahoma, but yet we're seeing an old man. We're seeing basically old man Jake watch Oklahoma. Something's instantly up. And the fact that we're not like geared toward anybody the entire first, like, what feels like 30 minutes in the car, like we don't see anybody, and she's turning off all of her phone calls from her Lucia and stuff like that. I was like, what is going? Something's definitely off. Something's definitely wrong. But they are just having this monotonous conversation about ode imitations of immortality and stuff like that. I don't know. Says it's a Ode Imitations of Immortality, Recollections of Early Childhood is a poem by William Wordsworth, completed in 1804. What the fuck? Who the fuck would know this? Like, this was not something that was taught readily in school. So, like, Charlie Kaufman's just pulling out these things from right out the ass, is what I say. This is straight bullshit, is what it feels like. They're just talking to make it sound like they have something smart to say. Double toasted said it best. It sounds like 2 college kids trying to have a interesting conversation about nothing. After she recites a morbid poem about coming home, they arrive at the farmhouse. Jake takes the young woman to the barn, where he recounts a story about a maggot-infested pig. And I'm guessing this is supposed to be about like life. The pig being eaten at is, I guess, life just dying, I guess. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff that I felt like needed to be explained a little bit more throughout the story, which is why I'm kind of going back in this. I'm like, what the fuck? I even listened and watched a couple of reviews, and I was like, none of this is really clicking yet. And there seems to be so much like metaphor happening throughout this thing. It's just like I'm barely grasping onto the actual story. Throughout the drive, as well as later scenes in the film, the main narrative is intercut with footage of a janitor working at a high school, including scenes where he sees a musical production rehearsal and a dance in the school's hallway. Inside the home, the young woman notices scratches on the basement door. Now, there's just weird, eerie things happening throughout this entire film that make you feel like something's going to be fucking weird. And the fucking scratches are way fucking too high. And it's like, what kind of dog is that tall? Jake's saying, it's the fucking dog, I guess, And it feels like every time he's lying about something, they like hold it just long enough for you to be like questioning him. And then the dog will walk in or something like that. It'll prove him that he was actually right. At dinner with Jake's parents, the woman who is described as having different occupations shares one of her verses and tells the story of how she and Jake met at trivia night, told with narrative inconsistencies. So the entire movie is littered with inconsistencies that kind of are trying to help you piece together that this is like some fuck shit's going on. Something's not right in the air, like the entire time I was thinking, all right, who's dead? He's dead, she's dead, someone's dead. Is this being told in someone's head? What's going on? I had something in my mind that was telling me that someone was dead because of, I thought they were in purgatory or something the entire time that it was happening. Later, she notices a picture of Jake as a child, but becomes confused after recognizing that child as herself, which is explained later. Um, the young woman receives another call, and a mysterious male voice explains that there is one question to answer. Jake's parents begin to transition back and forth from the younger selves to elderly dementia patients. When the young woman takes laundry down to the basement, she discovers several identical janitor uniforms in the laundry and receives another phone call from the mysterious voice. And so these are just like small illusions that are connecting Jake and her as a person. On the drive home, Jake mentions several events of that night that the young woman does not remember, including her drinking too much wine. Word association soon leads to an extinction of John Cassavetes, A Woman Under the Influence, um, a 1974 America drama film, comedy, and written, directed by John Cassavetes. The story follows a woman whose unusual behavior leads to conflict with her blue-collared husband and family. Like, I don't fucking know that. Was this like is this a piece of American film that was taught in film studies that I just missed? I don't, maybe I missed that day or something like that, but very specific. Like I said, if you don't know these specific things that happen, it's just like watching an Avengers movie and not seeing the first 20 movies. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Who the fuck is, Tony Stark? What's a Spider-Man, find me Spider-Man. I was just like, these are so specific. I cannot attached to what they're talking about for so much of it. It's just like, you're really isolating your audience by doing this. Finding themselves in the middle of a snowstorm, the pair stop at Tulsi Town, an ice cream parlor that they meet employees who are also students at where the janitor works. And while the young woman buys dessert, a bruised employee attempts to warn her of something she can't describe. I'm still kind of confused at what was going on with this. It was very strange on all accounts. Like, I didn't understand the girls that were like fascinated by him versus the girl that looked like she had been beaten up, and there was some strange smell coming from the back. Like, what the fuck? Like, a lot of that feels like there was something that happened when he was younger, but there's just some misinformation that we're getting, or just not enough information about it, Jake stops at the high school to throw the food cups away after a heated argument in the parking lot over the lyrics, "Baby, it's cold outside." Jake notices the janitor watching them from inside the school and decides to confront him. I thought that was an interesting conversation of the lyrics of "Baby, it's cold outside." She fucking takes this thing down, considering how much agency she has as a female, even though it's kind of just like all over the place with these narrative inconsistencies. It's still very, it was impressive how they took down the song "Baby, It's Cold Outside," talking about like the guy's trying to get her drunk. He definitely put a Mickey in her drink, tried to Cosby it up, and basically it's a problematic song. And so I was just like, God dang, this is the most relatable the conversation I think that I could really understand that they were talking about. But it's just taking so long for this. And he's like, yeah, I see your perspective and stuff, And so Jake notices the janitor, goes in front of him, leaving the young woman alone in the car. After a long wait, she decides to go. She decides to look for Jake inside the school. She meets the janitor and asks. She does pass She passed the dumpster where he dumps tons of the same ice cream floats or whatever they got from Tulsi Town. So he's done this clearly many times before. You're like, oh my gosh, we've done this, 100 times before. Dun dun dun. Like, I think we've seen this scene many times in movies where something's not right, and then you realize the character has been doing this, for 5-10 years or something like that, or they're stuck somewhere, and Yes, we've seen this. And so it's like, all right, now we're cooking with fire. We're this is where it's getting good, right? And as soon as she enters this fucking uh school, I feel like it just completely drops the ball. It was like he was juggling all these awesome ideas and cinematography and all this the really interesting plot lines and character beats, and then he just throws the entire thing out the window. He says, "Fuck it." So, yeah, after a long wait, she decides to look at the janitor. So she meets the janitor and asks him where Jake is before realizing she doesn't remember what Jake looks like. So there's things that are happening to her that I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. He's like, well, describe him. What does he look like? And she's like, well, it's kind of hard to describe people. It's like, no, he's not. He's a thick ass white guy, how in the middle of the night. She reveals that nothing happened between her and Jake on the night that they met, and instead of claiming she was made uncomfortable by Jake staring at her. And so what it seems to be at around this point, we find out that let me see. Okay, so after a young woman discovers Jake at the end of the hall, they look on as people dressed like themselves engaged in ballet, which ends in the janitor's dancer kills Jake's dancer with a knife. And so basically this is the forging of Jake and the janitor becoming one person. He is the janitor. The janitor has killed young Jake. Young Jake does not exist. Therefore, she is not existing either. So she's in his head. Having finished his shift, the janitor suffers a mental breakdown and begins to hallucinate visions of Jake's parents as well as an animated Tulsi Town jingle. I really like the design of the Tulsi Town. It kind of reminds me of Cuphead. He undresses and walks back into the school, being led by another hallucination of a maggot-infested pig who tells him that this is the same pig we see earlier that she sees. This is like, coming on in or something like that. I don't remember what he says. Who tells him that he and his ideas are one and the same and that he should get dressed. On an auditorium stage, an old Jake receives a Nobel Prize and sings a song. And I believe this is from A Beautiful Mind. Once again, I haven't seen A Beautiful Mind. If you're quoting all these specific things and I don't know them, I ain't gonna get the shot. To a full audience of various characters, and they're all in like stage play makeup, who give him a standing ovation. And in the final shot, a vehicle is covered in snow in the school parking lot. What they do not mention at the very end is it sounds like there was a car starting at the end of the film. So debatably he's alive. I mean, I think most people would think that he hallucinated and he hallucinated that going inside the school and just passed out in his car. But at the very end, maybe he just turned on the car and left, Well, it's really up to interpretation with what really happened. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And the part of the dancing ballet, I don't know if you should do the ballet and the stage play at the end, because it feels like they're both so elongated. It feels like a 25-minute outro of visualization of explaining of what was going on, which I almost felt like I needed more exposition. I was just like, I am really dumb right now. I have not seen I've not read the book, and my guess is people that have read the book will say, oh yes, this is exactly how it should go, because at the end of the book, what happens is, I'm thinking of ending things, takes it from being, you think that things are talking about this guy's life and him dealing with mortality, well, the movie kind of takes it as if I'm thinking of ending things, of ending a relationship. Really, it's I'm thinking of ending a life. I'm thinking of he's thinking of killing himself. It's almost like suicide pact of some sort. He's in the book. It is much more gruesome. What apparently happens is they find. I'm gonna go ahead and spoil the book. I have not read it, but what I heard is they find Jake in the school. He does um, strip down naked, leave his car, and walk into the school. I don't know if the dance and all of the uh, I don't know if the audience of the auditorium stage is happening, but they find Jake in the closet having stabbed himself to death, and there's like a note that explains that he, made up this girl in his head and stuff like that. I don't know. That's what happened in the book. In this, it seems like he wanted to kind of have a little bit more of a happy ending. Like, it's still really sad of what's going on. This guy's just completely depressed. He's probably some sort of failed physicist or something like that, and he's just down on his luck. I will link a couple of reviews of this I really enjoyed that helped me kind of understand this movie a little bit better. I hope this review helped, kind of flesh things out and help you understand what actually happened in this movie. Because I, even regurgitating it, I'm like, what the fuck was going on? Was the juice worth the squeeze and stuff like that? And so honestly, kind of a toss up depending on who you are. So it's kind of hard to recommend it. Gave it a 7 out of 10, mostly because it's ambitious. I just don't think it completes a couple of narrative loops that it really needed to for more mainstream audiences and people like me that haven't read up on or are not up to date on John Cassavetes. It's kind of like Tarantino popping out all these pop culture references and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a very mixed bag. In my opinion, it's probably not going to make. It'd be very low on the top 10 of my movies of this year, but I don't know. It might make it. I'll let y'all know. Let me know what you thought about I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I definitely see a positive review, and I definitely see the negative review. I am curious what everyone's feeling and thinking about this movie. So let me know how I can improve. Remember to subscribe, thumbs up. We like the thumbs. Give us all the thumbs. If you can and are interested in getting these podcasts early, you can get them early on YouTube and Patreon. We are offering a Patreon. It's going to have the full library of LuckyDog podcasts. We've also got reviews on animated shows like we got Yu-Gi-Oh! We got like SpongeBob. We're going to probably pop out a couple more similar things, just like the reviews we have for podcasts that we have for like Avatar and stuff like that. So let me know how I can improve on the podcast. And retro reviews are in Patreon as well. So get it early on YouTube and Patreon. Get the podcast mastered on SoundCloud. Get it live on Twitch. Let me know how I can improve again. Thank you, and take it easy.